Welcome to Aircrew Interview. I'm Mike King, your host, and this is part one of our interview with former RAF Armourer Andrew King. In this episode, Andrew chats about why he became interested in aviation, joining the RAF and why he became an armourer, working on the Harriers for his first tour, moving on to the Jaguars, becoming a teacher, and finally getting involved in aircraft preservation. If you enjoy our videos and podcasts and would like us to continue putting out regular quality content, head over to patreon.com/Aircrew Interview, where you can donate monthly, and in return you will get rewards ranging from early interview viewings, bonus clips, credited as a producer, and much more. Thank you and enjoy. So Andy, when did you first become interested in aviation?
Probably my earliest aviation memories, I think, all due to my granddad. He was in the Air Force during the war. Spent a lot of time with my grandparents when I was younger, and it kind of, that influence started at an early age. One of my earliest memories is being out with my gran and granddad and driving past Church Fenton, just outside York. My grandfather was based there during the war. And they used to have a Spitfire Gate Guardian, an actual Spitfire, not a plastic one like you see now.
Yeah.
And my granddad said, "Oh, do you want to come and have a look?" I'm like little lad, like 5 or 6. Yeah, I'll go and have a look at that. And because he had the gift of the gab, he went up to the guardroom and said, "Oh, can my grandson come and have a look at this Spitfire?" And they said, "Oh, yeah, we'll look." Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, we'll open it up. Nick can have a sit in it. So, no health and safety back then or any concerns. Just like up you get. Chuck me up into this Spitfire and had a sit in a Spitfire, aged 5 or 6 it was. And then many years later, when the Church Fenton Air Show was on back in 2017, I think it was, Great Yorkshire Air Show. Mm-hmm. They that Spitfire came back to had been restored and came back to Church Fenton, and I got to see it off. So the first aircraft I ever sat in, I got to 40 plus years later see that aircraft off again from the same base my grandfather was based in the war. So pretty big thing for me. So yeah, that's pretty much about my first memory of aviation. Then it's all gone from there, gone uphill or downhill, depends which way you want to put it.
Yeah. So what year did you actually join the Air Force?
So I joined the Air Force in February '96. Mm-hmm. So I'd always kind of harboured an interest in doing it, and it was one of those things that I guess was kind of a foregone conclusion almost. Mm-hmm. Yeah, joined '96, wasn't really sure what to do, went to see all the careers guys, saw this job called Armourer and thought that looks pretty funky, I might have some of that. Mm-hmm. And so that was that. So yeah, joined up February '96, did all my initial basic training stuff at Halton, which was, kind of having to think now, X weeks, 8 weeks probably, back then it was. And then came just down the road to Cosford, and that was my technical training. So arrived there, I think it was probably about the April time, and then it was through to the end of the year, my initial mechanics course. Didn't really know where I fancied getting posted or to what, so it was kind of the luck of the draw. And then turned out my posting at the end was to Jaguars, to Coltishall. So there was 6 of us actually off our mechanics course. So 2 of us posted to 54, 2 to 6 squadron, and 2 to 41. So just after the new year, 1997, we all sort of convoyed down to a new life and start at Coltishall. So mm-hmm. Very different, obviously, from training, sort of in at the deep end. Working on the Jaguar, great aircraft to work on, fairly straightforward. They were sort of the earlier mark of Jaguar then, so GR1As, GR1Bs, and then in the process of various upgrades to Jaguar 96 and Jaguar 97 standard, mainly avionics related things. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. went here, there and everywhere with them, got off and about various different places. Spent quite a bit of time in Italy at Gioia del Colle, in sort of on the southeastern coast of Italy, providing air cover over Bosnia because of all the ongoing conflict over there. Aircraft were doing a lot of, not actively bombing at the time, but we were flying armed all the time and doing a lot of reconnaissance work, photographing what had been going on. Unfortunately, some of the mass grave things, it was all formed part of the investigation, things like that. So we spent a lot of time there in Italy, did other overseas stuff with them, Sardinia to Decimomanau. We were pretty much some of the last Air Force squadrons to go and do the traditional armament camps there. Where else do we go? Holland, all over, detachments in the U and things like that. So it was good, good aircraft to work on. For me it was, a bit of a, quite a interesting thing, first operational squadron. So yeah, it was really good. From there when was it? So 98 it was, so posted from there to back down the road to Cosford, and then my fitters course, because I joined up under the mech tech scheme, so you were going to get promotion to junior technician. So came back here, and then it's kind of a longer course, split quite much down the middle, academic. So a lot of engineering theory, engineering science, a lot of heavy going stuff, maths and things, engineering, mathematics and things like that. So you get a formal engineering qualification at the end, and then kind of halfway through it's back onto the stuff that your trade specific things like that. So did all that, finished there in May 1999, posted to I'd asked to go back to Coltishall, asked to go up to Leamin, because it was been a Yorkshire lad, fancied being up there, tornadoes and things like that, but it wasn't to be. So my initial posting came through to Coningsby, and I think it was going to be the launcher bay, and that wasn't for me. So one of the other lads had got Harrier squadron, 4 squadron, and he didn't fancy it, and I did. So we did a swapsy, and then that's when my sort of association with the Harrier started. So posted to 4 squadron, just at the very end of the RAF Germany thing. So Larbrook shut in, 3 and 4 squadron coming back. So I had a couple of trips to Larbrook, but essentially we were starting at Cottesmore. The Tornado testing establishment, the Treble TE, they'd disbanded, finished, and so we were kind of waiting around for a lot of the infrastructure to be changed there. So it was a bit of a unsettled time when we moved in, because the base was still geared for Tornado, and then these Harrier upstarts all turned up from Germany, and so lots of building work going on and things. So it's a busy time for us adapting into the new base and things. Always busy with Harriers. Again, the Bosnia thing had finished, and then almost straight away Kosovo, all the issues started there, so we were providing air support for them in Kosovo. Again, back to Gioia del Colle, living in the same hotels in the same towns, back in Italy again, just with a different airframe. So we spent an awful lot of time out there, rotating around the other Harrier squadrons, carrying out the commitment. Other things with the Harriers, obviously they never told me about it when I joined the Air Force. They never said, oh, you'll be spending a lot of time at sea. It turns out that that's what happens when you get on a Harrier squadron. So we ended up spending quite a bit of time at sea on the different carriers and things, and doing a lot of Navy related training and getting used to shipborne stuff, which some people hated. I think it's a Marmite thing, you either loved it or hated it. Because I'm a bit of a geek, I liked it, because it's different and it's not what I expected to do. So I really enjoyed it, that side of things. I found it, just because it's different, it's interesting, it's a break from the norm. So yeah, we did various different courses to enable you to go and operate on the carriers. So sea survival courses, which I was less keen on. I only learned to swim in my mid-20s, which was thanks to the efforts of the PT staff at Cosford. They succeeded where everyone else had failed and managed to teach me to swim, but I wasn't particularly keen on having to leap into the sea and things. It made me very sad. So yeah, so that was one course that was different, but I'd rather not do again. And then my first introduction to 808 was actually through one of those courses. So the Air Force decided they would send some of us to Culdrose to do a deck handling course, so to learn how to marshal aircraft around on an aircraft carrier deck. Obviously restricted space, but very different to what we're used to and things, and how you operate with them on the deck. So it was quite different, you know, for us. And when we got there, sure enough, the aircraft, they have a big concrete dummy aircraft carrier deck essentially on the airfield, and then wheel out a load of these GR3s and practice taxiing those around whilst you stand in front of them desperately trying not to marshal it off the edge of the carrier deck and things. So that's where I first met 808. She was one of the aircraft there. So that's my first meeting with her, probably 2000 somewhere like that. I think somewhere like that. My not sure the exact date. So yeah, that's when I first met her. And then once we'd done all those courses, ironically, in fact, after doing the deck handling course, the Navy said, "Oh, well, we'll never let you marshal aircraft around on a deck anyway." Oh, all right then. So it was a week's different experience anyway. So yeah, we spent time on the carriers and things, various different cruises. I don't know if cruise is the right word. Journeys around various places on the carrier, North Sea stuff, around the UK, generally short stuff. One of the biggest ones I did, we flew out to Malta the day before 9/11 actually. We flew out to Lucca and met HMS Illustrious. She was in Valletta. And then we had the day off next day, and we were actually out roaming around Valletta, getting accustomed to the local sites, mainly in Bath. And me and some other guys were actually in the bar that Oliver Reed died in when he was filming Gladiator. We were in there when it all started appearing on the news. So quite a momentous day for all the wrong reasons, unfortunately. So we went back to the ship. Rather naughtily, they said, "Oh, we're going to cancel all shore leave." So we quickly legged it back off the ship before they did and disappeared around the island drinking for the rest of the night. And when we got back, obviously all hell had broken loose, and the next day we set sail early, and then we were off around the Med, doing a lot of training and things there. Went down through the Suez Canal with a carrier, which is quite interesting, all the way down through there, and then round in towards the Indian Ocean, and then we disembarked off the ship and we're on Mazira, island off Oman there for quite a while, doing an exercise. But it was quite unusual in that this exercise had been planned for probably years, and then suddenly 9/11 had happened, and you know, we were there trying to do an exercise, and the Americans were turning up with everything ever on a huge war footing. So our exercise was kind of shooed into the background a bit, and so yeah, interesting and troubling times and things. So that was quite a memorable cruise on the ship. Yeah, did various other ones. I don't know, you know, probably spent, you know, months and months on board the ship. It sort of all blends into one thing when you're sailing around. But yeah, I always enjoyed it because it's just different and things like that, and it is, you know, pretty exhilarating, if one want to use a word, exciting, launching, you know, Harriers off a carrier and things. And we did do in latter years did some missions launching aircraft off armed. So obviously my role coming to the forte, live weapons on and launching them into missions in Afghan off the carrier in the Indian Ocean. So that was quite interesting doing that. Yeah, went all over with the Harriers. We used to do a lot of travelling with them, Canada with them, Alaska, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, we got around all over. the thing that makes any squadron in the Air Force, is the lads on it, and we just had a great team. You know, they were all, that's what made it. No one ever wanted to go on leave because they didn't want to go away and miss anything. It was a kind of a big family thing, which I suspect probably comes from the Germany thing. So, you know, we're all, you know, one big family and stuff, and that still continues now. I mean, we've got the Harrier Force Association. We march on Remembrance Sunday in London at the Cenotaph. So ironic, I spent 22 years desperately avoiding doing any parades in the Air Force because you don't want to do any parades, and the year are left, like, do you fancy doing that? Oh yeah, I'll come on. So it's a real honour to do it. You know, it's one of the most humbling things I've ever done. You know, it really is something, standing on the you know, down Whitehall when the gun goes off and there's thousands of people there and London's completely silent is a remarkable thing. So it's a privilege to do it, and especially so with the company, you know. So yeah, a great thing. I left Harriers in 2005, so I left 4th Squadron there. I knew I was kind of coming up to a point where I'd get a posting, so I thought I'd better jump somewhere rather than get pushed somewhere I don't want to go. And so I asked, I don't know whether foolishly, I thought I might try something different, so I went to bomb disposal. So only up the road from Cottesmore to Wittering, so still living in Rutland. And then, yeah, started off with RAF bomb disposal. So I was there 2005 to 2013, so quite a long period. Certainly not your average job, as you'd expect. Took me here, there and everywhere, doing various different things, conventional weapon disposal. So a lot of that in the UK. You know, we certainly had then 2 teams on call 24/7 all the time. So a team to deal with conventional explosives been found, you know, which there's a surprising amount of in the UK to be found places, people digging things up, all sorts, you know, legacy things from the war and various stuff like that. And then a team that did counter-terrorism stuff, so you'd have a IED team, so-called improvised explosive device. So I qualified as a IED, you know, one of the IED guys. Interesting, so you'll have seen all the bomb disposal robots, things like that. So obviously we learnt to drive all those, so you're covering incidents in the UK, of which there are frequently things. I mean, you'll see them on the news, stuff like that. I spent a lot of time out and about in that job. You could come to work and then in the morning, and then by the end of the day be off somewhere in a field digging up a crashed aircraft that somebody had found with live weapons on, or off, you know. So it was a real varied job, and not like the norm, almost like, albeit an armourer job, but it's almost a bit like a separate trade really. A lot of the training is done in conjunction with the Army, because a lot of it's joint service, EOD, explosive ordnance disposal. So your courses are in conjunction with the Navy, so like my IED course and my conventional course were with Navy lads, Royal Engineer lads, Royal Logistics course. So yeah, so really interesting. Went all over outside the UK doing bits and pieces with that, all sorts of stuff. I was part of the last team in Iraq, the last UK EOD team in Iraq. When Iraq drew down, we handed over pretty much everything at Basra to the Americans. The US Navy came in and took over the EOD, so it was quite an interesting time handing over after all that legacy stuff. Having been in Kuwait for the start of the second Gulf War Operation Telic with the Harriers, I kind of finished it with RAF bomb disposal at the end, when it was all drawing to a close and everyone pulling out, and the Americans took over. So yeah, sort of there at the beginning and there at the end of it. So quite that closure and things like that. So it was. Remember when we were getting on the Herc to fly out of Basra, sort of lingering, desperately trying to sort of linger behind, so I could say I was the last one onto it. And the chief who was there with us, Tony, he was like, "Get on you, I'm going to be the last one." I was trying to fight each other to be the last ones off the tarmac at Basra onto the aircraft. But yeah, so very different times. Come 2013, I'd been there quite a while, and you know, just don't want to let the grass grow under your feet too much, and was aware I was not getting any younger, and running around being shot at in places is a bit of a young man's game rather than an old decrepit, knackered 40-some-year-old. So I thought, right, well, I quite fancy a bit of a change. And if at the beginning of my Air Force career you'd said, oh, do you fancy, going and teaching people, I'd probably looked at you like you were mad. But by then I sort of quite fancied the idea. I've got a fairly sponge-like brain for absorbing knowledge about stuff. None of it useful, but certainly when it comes to aviation stuff, a fairly good knowledge and I guess a lot of experience. So I thought I quite fancy teaching. So volunteered to be an instructor at Cosford. Came and did a selection board where you come and you have to have a subject that you've researched and you present it to a board, like a subject matter expert. So there'll be, it had to be on a trade topics of armament, and have like some armourers in there, and they'll ask you questions to make sure you know what you're talking about and just how you conduct yourself and things like that. So managed to pass that, wing it, whichever you whichever you want to use. So yeah, passed that, and then started there 2013. In between sort of coming to the end of bomb disposal and going on to there, I had a phone call from a gentleman, sort of almost a bit out of the blue, talking about Harriers, because I've always, outside the Air Force, I've always done stuff in aviation preservation. Before I joined the Air Force, I'd sort of got involved at, being a Yorkshire lad, I started off at Elvington at the Yorkshire Air Museum there, and I saw that. I went there again with my granddad, when I was little, and it was no museum, it was just the empty buildings and in the long grass, like up to here as a kid and things. Then the museum started and sort of developed, and I visited it and things like that. And then when I was old enough, thought, oh, I'm quite interested to see if I can go and do stuff. And then that was that, started, just going up there and doing odd little jobs and helping people out, and then got involved with the Victor, with Andre Tempest. He owns the Victor, and started with all that, and then sort of continued really ever since then in conjunction with the Air Force stuff. So I've always been involved with aviation outside. And so yeah, just beginning of 2013. Yeah, just sort of around Christmassy sort of time, I had a phone call from this gentleman who was interested in buying a Harrier, and he'd sort of been passed my name as being someone who knows a bit about them and aviation preservation, and the ins and outs and what's involved, things like that. And that gentleman was the owner of this beast, Mr. Millington. And so Roy rang me up and we exchanged lengthy phone calls about anything to do with Harriers and everything in between, and stuff like that for a number of hours and things. And sort of because he'd had the opportunity to potentially buy 808, so I kind of let him know what he was going to be getting himself in for, and that it's a black hole that you pour money into and not see, kind of things, and you have to do it for the love of it, not for any other reason. But being an engineer and somebody who's extremely knowledgeable about anything to do with engineering and stuff like that, he got that, and you can't just buy an aircraft, you have to think about the other things. Need something to tow it with, something to connect it to the tractor, or oils, the fuels, all the other things, anything, everything you can get for it. So it's not just a case of buying an aircraft. So that was that. Then in March 2013, I went off to the Falklands for 4 months. Turned out it was my final overseas tour in the Air Force. So I was down there for 4 months running the armoury, so looked after all the small arms for the entire island basically, and a secondary role doing explosive ordnance disposal down there. There's a lot of legacy minefields still left, things like that, so we go out and inspect the fences, make sure they were in a good state of repair, no one could get in, livestock, things like that. Assisted with some minefield clearance down there with a civilian firm, going and walking around in minefields, which is quite sobering. Even though it's perfectly safe, there's always that little bit of doubt, and it definitely doesn't feel right to be climbing over minefield fences and walking about in them. But it's all the fun of the job. So yeah, I loved the Falklands. Brilliant. It's again a Marmite thing. I think you'll either love it or hate it, but it's what you make of it, isn't it? And I made sure, because I'm old enough to remember the Falklands War, I found it fascinating. I could go and walk down that track that I'd seen, you know, that famous photo of the Marine walking down there with a radio on the Union Jack flag there. I walked down that, stood where that photo was taken, climbed up all the mountains where the battles were, Tumbledown, Harrier, Two Sisters, all those sort of things like that. So really interesting for me. So I made sure I just got out and saw as much as I could, flew a lot, went out in the Hercs flying, doing shipping, surveillance stuff, airdropping supplies to places. It was real good. It's kind of a bit of an old-fashioned Air Force, an old-fashioned mentality there, where everyone sort of knows everyone, and you can just turn up and go, oh, any chance for a flight in Aircrew? Yeah, so yeah, off you go, and go flying, hanging out the door, taking photos of ships or chucking stuff off the ramp for people and things. So it was real good. I liked it. And then when I came back from there, it was straight here to Cosford. So I was lucky in that it's always a case of who you know, not what you know. And a good friend of mine was the warrant officer in charge of the armament training school, and he said, whereabouts do you fancy working? Do you want to come and work here for me? You know, whereabouts? And there was the opportunity to work on the airfield at Cosford on 238 Squadron. And I said, no offence, I'd really quite fancy doing that down there, the practical side with the aircraft and stuff. So he very kindly facilitated it, and I started work on 238 Squadron on the line, and that was finishing my career the way it started with Jaguar. So we used them as training airframes for the new entrance into the Air Force. So I'd see armourers coming through at the all at the end of their training phases at Cosford. It's kind of like the culmination of everything before they get their postings when they're with us, and then they're off to they were off to wherever they were going at the end, providing they passed, of course. So I'd see the armourers, and then you'd see the AMMs, aircraft maintenance mechanics. So they were the guys who, in latter part of their career, had become either lights, so avionics guys, or heavies, the engine / airframe guys. So we'd see all of those, and they'd be putting all the stuff they'd learnt at Cosford really into practice with us. Probably split, I'd say, roughly about a third in the classroom theory, and then 2/3 practical. So you're with them in the hangar, showing them how you inspect aircraft, how you service them, fuel them, fill them, you know, check the oils, all that sort of stuff. And then we had running Jaguar aircraft, so we'd have the aircraft up and running, and they'd go through a start-up with them, and then marshalling them around the dispersals and things like that. So we'd teach them how to do all that and things like that. And after much nagging and me like badgering the flight sergeant, they agreed to let me be one of the taxi pilots. So I got to, you know, drive those aircraft around. And spent quite a lot of time doing it. I was really quite lucky. It's you know, a bit different. So I've been a ground crew, and especially an armourer. To do it, there weren't ever many armourers. I think there was only me and one other armourer got to do it there. So it was usually the other trade. So I'm glad my nagging paid off. So yeah, it did work in the end. So yeah, it was real good. You know, I loved driving them around and things like that. It was great and entertaining, trying to, depending on which way you were feeling, not to run the trainees over and things like that. So yeah, it's good, really good. Unfortunately, they made the decision to stop using live aircraft 2017, I think, probably, something like that, 2016, 17. I could have plenty of comment on my thoughts on it, and I know they'd be echoed by a lot of people I worked with, and the rights and wrongs of it. None of us could find any rights with it, and it was but you know, it is what it is. That's the Air Force. Sometimes decisions are made by people who don't see the bigger picture, but and certainly I know I felt it, you know, had a detrimental effect on training. and I know a lot of other people did, because there's no substitute for the real thing, is there? You know, you can read about it all you like, you can watch a PowerPoint presentation about it, but there's nothing like being physically picked up and gone, right, stand next to that running aircraft, because it's that visual thing in front of you, and it's alive and it's running, and if you make a mistake you're going to end up hurt, you know. And fear, if that's the right word, can be quite a good teacher sometimes. So you've got that fear factor and that presence of the aircraft and stuff. When you take that away, you know, I feel we all felt that training lost something, because you've lost that realism. But it was what it was, and so 2018, beginning of 2018, that was my 22 years point. I'd felt that sort of I'd had a good run, I'd done loads of stuff, and I thought it's a fair time to part company with the Air Force at 22. You know, I always said to myself I wanted to get to 22 years. There's various times along the way I thought, oh God, it's a long way, I don't know whether I'll get there, you know, because you can obviously leave at different points, 12, 15 years and stuff, but, you know, I made it to the end. I always said to myself I want to do. So, you know, I did, and thought I'm still young enough to pursue another career. The Air Force will pay me a pension as well, which is always nice. And so that was that. So came out, and then now I work for a civilian air cargo airline, West Atlantic, so a joint Swedish UK company. So I work at East Mids, so I'm one of the engineers for them there at the moment. So I'm just looking at going through my licenses, hopefully, if I can persuade the Air Force to give me some money still. I think they still owe me one educational grant, so I might use it for something practical, because I can't think of anything else I'm going to use it for. So so we operate a mixed fleet of cargo aircraft, so predominantly 737s, classics, some next gen. We've got 4 next gen 800 series, ATPs, the old venerable British Aerospace ATP. We've still got quite a few of those. We've just reactivated 2 that have been in like long-term storage at Coventry for years, and they've just got them going. So they've gone, done a ferry flight to the Isle of Man, and they're going to be back into service soon. Got some 767s. I never see them. They're based over in Europe, so they do some of the big longer routes and stuff. Nice aircraft, but I'm generally not too involved with them. As I say, they don't come over to the UK. And then we've got some couple of CRJ 200 bombardier jets, and they operate right up Norway and things like that, and they do routes up to Svalbard, right up far north of, you know, in the Arctic Ocean. And they take all the supplies in there, mail and things like that. So it's a big concern. And quite high pressure compared to passengers. You know, if your aircraft's delayed a bit, they give you all a voucher for a free coffee and things, or something like that. But everyone wants their post when it's supposed to be there. They want their parcel they've ordered from Amazon on time. I've paid for Amazon Prime, it should be here, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of pressure with cargo stuff, which, not having been in commercial aviation before, you just kind of don't really think of. And then it's only when you get involved you think, oh Lord, you know, people like, when's the aircraft going to be fixed? Is it ready yet? Is it ready yet? Where's those parts? Is it done yet? Are you ready yet? There's that all the time, so it's real high pressure. But yeah, so it's different, a lot similar to the Air Force and the military, but yeah, a lot that's different as well. So a new challenging career, but and a bit of a steep learning curve for me, having to learn new aircraft types, 737s and stuff, but it's slowly sinking in a bit, so starting to learn the aircraft and their foibles and things. So yeah, so there we go.